Hi, and welcome to this week's episode of It's Just Racing, hosted by Jim and Jim. I'm Jim,
And I'm Jim.
and we're here to talk about racing. Going to start off with a new development from the Rolex 24 at Daytona. Jim?
That's right. When we last left you, we had reported that the Tower Motorsports LMP2 car had won the race. But upon technical inspection post race, it was disqualified. And the disqualification elevated the United Autosport car to the win. And the Tower car was disqualified because the rear skid block was worn too much. Now, this is the plank that lies under the car, and it was worn more than the allowed 5 millimeters, and so that's an automatic disqualification.
Okay, I have two things. One, if it takes you 5, 6, 7 days to find something wrong with a car to DQ with somebody, that doesn't work for me. It needs to be done there at the track. Second, I don't get the whole skid block deal. So you're allowed to have a certain amount of wear on the skid block, but it can't surpass
That's
some number.
correct. It cannot be more than 5 millimeters of wear.
So if you have 5 millimeters and a scratch, then you get disqualified.
That is correct.
So why do they even have the skid block that thick? Why don't they make the skid block 5 millimeters thinner, and then a quick visual inspection would show if you were hitting the skid block or not?
Well, at least to me, it seems that in endurance racing like this, over 24 hours, there's going to be some wear to the skid block, no matter where it is. I mean, you go over a curb a couple times too aggressively, it's going to wear the skid block. I think it gives them actually a little more leeway than if it were that way.
Okay, now if I remember, they found a bent damper in the right rear. Is that correct?
That's correct. That's what Sebastian Bourdais. He made some social media posts. He was disappointed with the result. He didn't like how it made the team seem like they were cheating. He told the world that they found it that one of the rear dampers was broken, and that controls the ride height, and so it lowered the rear due to that broken part.
Now, things are probably different in the big dollar world of racing, but when I raced, if they found something that was deemed a disqualifiable, we were given 5 or 10 minutes to, while in the tech area, show what could have caused that. Say your wheelbase was off and you could show, oh, look, I have a bent panhard bar. They don't allow that. You can't say, look, my shocks broke.
Well, the team did protest the result, but the disqualification was upheld. So I'm not sure what they had to do to try to prove that. But the way I see it is, it's unfortunate. I sympathize with the team, but IMSO has been consistent with this. Last year, they disqualified the winning GTP Porsche from Watkins Glen for the same infraction. And while you don't like to see that happen, especially since it was not an intentional breaking of the rules, it I don't see really any way around it, because if that damper breaks and it lowers the rear ride height, is that giving that car any additional downforce? Is it helping the handling? And if it is, which I don't know if it is or not, but some team could try to take advantage of that, and they could try to break that intentionally to get extra performance out of the car.
True. I know of people who've bent parts and then put them on their car just so they could gain an advantage, and when caught in tech pointed out the bent parts and were allowed to go. So racers will always push the limits, and there's gray areas everywhere, and I don't know if that's what happened or not, but we've got a new winner in the LMP2 from the Rolex 24 at Daytona. Moving on to Supercross. Supercross, this was their first Triple Crown race of the year. What differentiates that from the regular race, which has two heat races, a last chance qualifier, and then an A main, The Triple Crown, they just take the top 22 qualifiers and they race 3 A mains and add the points together. So if you finished first, you get 1 point, second, you get 2 points, and so on. They add the points together at the end of the 3 races, and whoever has the lowest points, as in golf, wins. I still, after what's this been, 5-6 years they've been doing this, I still don't know if I like it.
You know, you have been a little undecided about whether or not you like it. I think you're warming up to it a little bit. Personally, I find it interesting. I'm glad that they only have, I think, 3 a year. But I think it's an interesting format. When I was a kid, I raced BMX bikes, and it's similar to the total points format, which I enjoyed. I think it gives a little extra excitement. You've got to finish well in all 3 motos to get the overall. So I kind of enjoy the novelty of it, I think.
See, I can see it both ways. Say the first race out of the gate, you crash, you finish bad. On a normal weekend, you would go to the last chance qualifier, assume you're good enough, you'd qualify into the A main, and everybody starts at 0, and if you win, you win. Where with the Triple Crown, you crash out in the first race, finish 22nd. I don't care if you win the next 2, you're still not going to win the night. But, it also gives you the opportunity, if you finish 8th, you can come back and get a couple first or seconds and still be in the running. So I'm still unsure. It is what it is. Nothing I can do about it. I'm not Mr. Supercross. But I do like that the races are shorter than a typical A main, which I think is too long. But anyhow, the results from Supercross. I'll go with the 250s first. Julien Beaumaire in race 1 took the lead, and then he crashed, giving the lead to Hayden Deegan. Guess what he did?
What did he do?
He crashed, giving Cole Davies the lead, and he continued on to the win. The second race, Julien Beaumaire took the lead. What did he do?
Well, naturally, he went on to win the race.
No, he crashed, and Cole Davies won the second race also. So in the 250, third and final event. Now remember, Cole Davies won the first race, won the second race. He crashed at the start of the third race. He did recover, went from 22nd to 8th, but that wasn't enough. Jordan Smith won the third and final feature event, which gave him a second, a third, and a first throughout the night. 6 points total, so he was the low point scorer. Jordan Smith won, Hayden Deegan second, and Cole Davies were third. This was also Triumph's first win since entering Supercross last year, so they started off okay, and they really turned it on this year, so that was nice to see another manufacturer in victory lane. Especially being an English car guy, I associate Triumphs with English cars, and it's an English bike, so cheerio, governor.
You do like your British cars.
Unfortunately, I am a glutton for punishment. So in the 250 points, Julien Beaumaire in the lead, Jordan Smith second, Hayden Deegan down to third, Cole Davies in fourth, and Joe Shimoda with the broken fingers is still in fifth. The top 3 riders, Beaumaire, Smith, and Deegan, are all within 3 points of each other, so they are off for about a month, being the regional series. The 250 East are off. The 250 West will start next race.
Yeah, nobody's really taken control of this championship yet. I think it's still anybody's race.
It's nice. It's fun to see Cole Davies up there in fourth. He wasn't even supposed to race. He was supposed to be in the futures, the minor league or development, and they made a last-minute decision to race the 250 West, and he's definitely got it going on.
Good to see he's taking advantage of that opportunity.
He is. Moving on to the 450s, it started off much less Exciting. Cooper Webb won the first race, didn't crash. Ken Roxon won the second race. Eli Tomac won the third race. Now, the big development here, Jet Lawrence, last year's champion, tore his ACL. It was a really weird looking deal. He just put his foot down, tapped it on the ground, and he was done. Pulled off, and his ACL's gone. He needs surgery. I would guess he's out for the season. I wouldn't risk coming back. But yeah, it was bad to see Jet.
Yeah, I think he was the championship favorite this year too, so it's too bad that he won't be able to repeat.
It is. Hopefully his brother can step up and get some wins.
Yeah, he's got to do it for the little brother.
Got to get one of them Lawrence boys. And so, for the points in the 450s, Chase Sexton took the lead. Ken Roxon dropped down to second. Eli Tomac third. Cooper Webb fourth. And Jet Lawrence, even though he finished last and will not be racing, has currently fifth in points.
Now this points battle is pretty close too. Is it what, 2 points at the top?
It is real close. Roxon had the points lead coming in and dropped it. He needed one more position to keep the red plate. He was visibly upset with himself. He acknowledged he made a bunch of mistakes, but he did grab one of the race wins on the weekend, just not enough to keep that red number plate. Now let's move on to some Formula One silliness.
Oh, I know you've all been waiting for this. We've got to discuss the new Formula One rule changes. Now we'll start it out slower with some of the less controversial ones. The FIA has reduced the amount of flexible front wing that is allowed. It used to be the front wing could flex up to 15 millimeters. They've reduced that to 10.
How much is that in American?
It's not a lot. That's like maybe a third of an inch, maybe a half an inch.
Okay.
Something like that. My conversions aren't exact. So that'll, take away a little bit of development from the teams in that department. I don't really know what that'll do to the cars. Probably be a little more difficult to dial them in with the handling. But the teams will adapt. They always do.
I believe there's some concern that losing the flex in the wing could bring back the porpoising issue that we had a couple years ago.
Well, I hope we don't see that. So I guess we'll just have to wait for the first race.
We will find out.
Additionally, with the points format, there will be no more bonus point for running the fastest lap.
That's a bummer.
I know they took this away probably because there were some shenanigans going on last year with midfield teams who may have had an affiliation with a better team that may have been incentivized to pit for fastest lap when it didn't really help their race. And I know some other teams who may not have a minor league team, so to speak, were upset with that. Personally,
it sounds to me like you're talking about Red Bull.
I might be talking about the Visa Cash App Racing Bulls. I still call them Toro Rosso.
They change names I don't even know what they are this year.
I think they're still Visa Cash App Racing Bulls, but
I guess we'll find out.
Yeah.
When we find out about the Flexi Wings, we'll see what name's on it.
But I kind of enjoyed the shenanigans. It gave that midfield battle just a little extra something because, you've got the top teams and then there's everybody else fights for 9th and 10th. And I liked how it added some excitement to that battle.
See, I didn't like that they only limited it to the top 10. You had to finish 10th or better to get the fastest lap point. Why can't the guy who's having a bad day, running 18th, 2 laps down, pit for some soft tires, and get himself a point?
So you're a big Sauber fan then?
I'm not saying that. I don't know. I don't like the Formula One point system. I don't like that everything is geared towards the top 10 only. You show up for every single race, 24 races, and you can end up with 0 points. It makes no sense to me. I scored the same amount of points in Formula One as multiple drivers did that ran the whole series last year. So that's, I'll get off my soapbox on that. I just don't like it.
Moving on to the big controversial rule. Now, I'm sure everybody's heard about this now.
Well, people who care about Formula One, for my NASCAR friends and my dirt racing friends, and oh, y'all, I'm really sorry we're talking about Formula One. Jim Jr. here's big into this stuff, so we're going to talk about it every week.
Now, this rule change, it started last year. The FIA president, his name is Mohammed Ben Sulayem. I'm not really sure about the pronunciation, so we just call him MBS normally. He was cracking down on some of the driver language. He doesn't like swearing. And last year, four-time champion Max Verstappen, he was penalized. He was given community service for swearing in a press conference. And I actually didn't know this, but Charles Leclerc, he was also penalized. He was fined $10,000 for swearing, but he was not given community service because he immediately apologized. So they thought the $10,000 fine was sufficient.
So as long as you say I'm sorry after you say shucks, you don't have to do community service.
Well, not anymore.
Oh!
Because the FIA, and specifically Mohammed Ben Sulayem, they've pushed through a new rule, which I would imagine is not very popular with the drivers, though they can't tell you about it. So we will instead. So the new rules, they state that driver misconduct can be punished. And I'm going to be reading quotes from the rule book here because it's pretty crazy. And what this misconduct is described as is the general use of language or gestures that is offensive, insulting, coarse, rude, or abusive, or might reasonably be expected or perceived to be coarse or rude, or to cause offense or be inappropriate.
Can you read that again?
Basically,
I just want to laugh.
Okay, I'll read the whole thing
Okay.
again. The general use of language or gestures that is offensive, insulting, coarse, rude, or abusive, or might reasonably be expected or perceived to be coarse or rude, or to cause offense or be inappropriate.
What is he doing?
Well, it seems that he's running the FIA as his personal dictatorship.
This is just ridiculous. So who is there a board of people, say, some drivers, some stewards, some officials who all get together and decide if what was said or done or perceived to have been done crosses the line to be coarse or possibly offensive?
Well, there are boards like that, but I doubt they'll be consulted on this because this was not a popular decision even within the FIA. It was pushed through an electronic vote without inviting the drivers' union or very many of the stewards. And so nobody at the FIA even wanted this pushed through. But somehow it got passed, and so now it's the rules.
So what? MBS just called a couple of his buddies and said, hey, quick, log on to Facebook and I'm going to put a poll up and we're going to say nobody can say anything and everybody hit yes and then I'll close the poll.
Now that's probably an oversimplification, but
I like to
basically,
oversimplify. I'm not the brightest guy, so if I can just lay it out in plain terms, that's what I prefer to do.
Now that's not all, because there are some very severe punishments for breaking these rules. For the first offense, it is a 40,000 euro fine, which in American is $41,600.
So, if they perceive that I possibly was rude to someone, they'll fine me $40,600 because I don't speak European.
That's correct. Now, if you do it a second time, and these penalties, they reset every 2 years, so you've got 2 years to accumulate 3 strikes, basically. The second time, they double the fine. So it's $83,200 on your second offense.
Can those offenses happen at the same time?
I'm not sure if they can run concurrently, but knowing how MBS is running the FIA, I would imagine so.
Okay, so let's just say we're racing, and Lance Stroll. Why do you laugh? He's a Formula One driver. Lance Stroll drives into me, puts me into the wall, and he gets out of his car to come over and yell at me because it was my fault that he hit me. And I flip him the bird
That's a strike right
and
there.
tell him to go to hell.
Now that's two
Is
strikes.
that two?
That is.
So that's
I
an
think that would be two.
$80,000 fine?
Now, and then imagine you try to protest this. Now, you're not allowed to do that anymore. Teams cannot protest penalties. And so I would imagine the protesting could be a third strike. And on the third strike, it's going to be a $125,000 fine, a 1-month suspension, and deduction of your championship points.
That's stupid. I'm sorry. I'd like to be more mature, but that's stupid. I enjoy Formula One strictly from the technology, the different things that they try week in, week out. That's what I like about a lot of racing. Formula One is the pinnacle of that, but this guy is gonna destroy it.
Oh, it gets worse. Because it's not just on the track if it's the heat of the moment and you're mad at Lance Stroll. It's the same punishment is recommended for words, deeds, or writing that have caused moral injury or loss to the FIA, or more generally, on the interests of motorsports or the values defended by the FIA. So if a driver came on our podcast and agreed with us here, that could be a strike.
Wow. So next time I talk to Max, I should say, "Hey Max, I'm turning on the camera, so don't say anything."
Yeah, next time you're Twitch streaming your iRacing and you see Max, you don't say.
Does that count?
I would imagine so if he mentioned the FIA.
Wow. Or if he said anything, because everybody knows who Max Verstappen is.
Oh yeah.
It would just, wow. That's ridiculous. Mohammed needs to go. I don't understand why Formula One needs the FIA. The FIA obviously needs the Formula One because it's a cash cow. But this is ridiculous. This isn't Saudi Arabia or wherever he's from, where these guys are racing.
There's more. The same fines are also recommended, and penalties, for the general making and display of political, religious, and personal statements in violation of the general principle of neutrality promoted by the FIA. And if you do anything that they don't like, you have to make a public apology and retract your comments.
Wait. So, I'm not being insensitive here. We know Lewis Hamilton is very driven by equality and such. So if he has a rainbow-colored helmet this year, is that considered a political statement or something, and he can get fined?
I would imagine so. It did say that you can do those things with the prior written approval of the FIA, but I doubt they'd approve that. So,
right, they won't even allow him to wear his helmet half the time when they're over in the Middle East. Wow. Well, in conclusion on that one, Mohammed's got to go.
Yeah.
And Formula One needs to dump the FIA. They need to govern themselves. One last thing on governing themselves. I just found out recently that the stewards who make all of these decisions in race for the pinnacle of auto racing are all volunteers. They're not paid. They're not full-time. I could go be a steward, I guess. That's ridiculous. Formula One needs to break away from the FIA, hire their own stewards, run their own show. They've got all the revenue. They hold all the cards. There's no reason for the FIA to exist alongside of Formula One, in my opinion.
I would concur with that.
All right. On a lighter note, we're going to talk about NASCAR. Um, NASCAR had their little race at Bowman Gray. I didn't watch it. I tried to watch a heat race. It was exactly as I was expected. About 50% of the people loved it, thought it was the best thing since sliced bread. The other 50%, like me, said that's not racing. Chase Elliott started on the pole and won. I don't think he led all the laps, but he did lead most of them. So Chase Elliott got his first win of the year, and it didn't matter. And there was a lot of tore up equipment and a lot of money wasted. And I heard today that NASCAR is talking about having this race overseas, so they can waste even more money, a la NFL having playoff games or football games in other countries. NASCAR is thinking about having this preseason race that doesn't mean anything in another country. Okay, now they also announced the Rookies of the Year. So we're going to talk about who we like. We're not going to talk about who we don't, because there's enough negativity with Muhammad. I don't want to have any more negativity here. In the truck series, we'll start off with Cup. We'll start off with the big boys. There's only two. We've got Shane Van Gisbergen and Riley Herbst. Who you picking, Jim?
Now, this is a tough one, because I think with how NASCAR has the playoff format, I think that Shane Van Gisbergen has a much better chance at making the playoffs, just because he's so good at road courses. I think he'll win probably two of those. But over a full season, I feel like Riley Herbst has the advantage, just because he had a good season at Xfinity last year, and he's much better at the ovals.
Exactly. I agree with you 100%. If there were no playoffs, if this was old time Winston Cup, I think that Riley Herbst would be the Rookie of the Year, just because he can turn left. He can go around in circles, and SVG just hasn't proven that he's got it figured out yet. Maybe things are different. Maybe he spent some time on the simulators. Maybe he's been running some short tracks somewhere that I don't know about. But overall, I'd pick Riley Herbst. I agree. But I do think that SVG will get the actual NASCAR Rookie of the Year award, because he will win a race or two, one of those road courses. So that's that. Moving on to the Xfinity Series, there's a bunch of new drivers.
And there's a lot of good names too, aren't there?
There are. We got Carson Kvapil, Connor Zilisch, William Sawalich, Taylor Gray, Christian Eckes, Daniel Dye, Nick Sanchez, and Dean Thompson. It's a good chance you know all those people. That's how many good drivers there are. It's a nice crop of rookies. What do you think, Jim?
Well, I made this pick last year when he got his first win on debut in the Xfinity Series at Watkins Glen. It's got to be Connor Zilisch. And now he's not just like SVG where he'll win on the road courses. He's been doing a lot of late model racing, and he's been winning on the roundy rounds too. He's shown some speed on the ovals, and I think that'll carry him to a championship in his rookie season.
And he's running some good equipment. He's running for, obviously, Dale Jr., so Junior Motorsports, that helps right there. Just so we're not picking the same people, I am going to go with, I'll go with William Sawalich. Kid from Minnesota. Between him and Zilisch, they took turns winning all the ARCA races. I think Zilisch is obviously a better road racer. I do think Sawalich is a really good oval driver, and I think our friend from Minnesota is going to beat Connor Zilisch, just so I can be a contrarian and we're not picking the same person.
You know, I think they'll have some good battles. I'll say that.
And he's in Joe Gibbs. So we got Gibbs versus Junior. Yeah. Probably the two best teams. I think Sawalich will be the best driver for Gibbs. it should be a good year in Xfinity. These these guys, most of them are moving up from the truck series. It's not like you got some true rookie, who's coming straight out of legend cars, hopping into an Xfinity car or something. So it's going to be a good one to watch. Now in the truck series, running for rookie of the year, we've got Tony Brightinger, Gio Ruggiero, Andres Perez. They're throwing all these foreign names at me in the truck series. Connor Mozak, Christian Rose, and Frankie Malcolm in the Middle Munoz. What do you think, Jim?
So we're not counting Daniel Hemrick in his return to the Truck Series as a rookie?
No.
All right, then.
No, if you've run Xfinity, won a championship, gone up to Cup, and now you're going back to trucks, you don't get to run for rookie again.
Well, I've got to say, I'm not too familiar with most of these drivers. The only one who I can actually remember seeing race is Connor Mozak. So I guess I got to go with him.
Oh, come on.
I don't think he has the outright speed to win a bunch of races, but I think he's pretty consistent and he's a good driver.
That would have been my pick also. Connor Mozak and the McAnally Hilgerman truck. That's the 19 Napa sponsored truck that Eckes has been driving, so we know it's good equipment. Mozak also has run a couple years in Trans Am, so he can run the road courses along with the ovals. He would have been my pick, but since you took him and I like to be different, I am going to pick Tony Brightinger. She's running for Tricon Garage. I'm a Tricon Garage fan. They've got good equipment. I think that, and don't take this wrong, if she concentrates on the racing and less on the marketing, she's a decent driver. She's in good equipment. I've never seen her on a road course. I've seen her running pavement midgets. She can drive. She's not a kid. She's in her mid-20s, I want to say. Sorry, I know you're not supposed to talk about a woman's age. But I will go with Tony Brightinger to go ahead and take the truck rookie of the year. Although I wanted to pick Connor Mozak, but I let you pick first, and that bit me in the behind. So that's what we've got for today. As usual, if there's anything you guys want to hear us talk about next week, drop it in the comments. And this was It's Just Racing with Jim and Jim. Thank you.